Uru ora. Ko te waka uru ora ki te kaunanui, ko te waka uru ora ki te kauroro. Ko te waka uru ora kia rangi nui atu nei. Turuturu o i te waka maua kia tīna, tīna, aumia ui e, tai ki e. Kei ngā mana, kei ngā tapu, kei ngā reo, tēnā koutou. Tēnā tātou i te aua ki o tātou mate. Liz, te aua ki tō waene, kata i tonu nei ka mate. Me ki rā te kōrero, mai mai rā koutou i te pō, ai oe tū ārai, ko te ka ukura, ai arataki te iwi ei. Kei ngā mana, e kui mai koro mai te pō, maranga, maranga, maranga maira. Kei ngā mana, kei ngā pou, e te iwi e ui mai nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā ui tātou katoa. Kia ora everybody, my name is Che Wilson, Che like chocolate, and it's truly a privilege and an honour to be here. And as I think about coming here, normally I would just talk like I am now. But because it's such a long way to come, I thought, well, actually I better be a bit more prepared than normal. Because usually we would never use speaking notes where I'm from, but I thought to ensure that I don't ramble and to make sure that I say the things that I think are important to share with you, I've written some notes. But firstly, e koro, Wilson, tēnā koe me o kōrero mo matariki. Ngā ue tū i te rangi, i wakatau mai au ki konei ina pō, tēnei kami atu kia koe. Last night I looked to the heavens after a great dinner, and I was trying to get my bearings. And the cluster of stars I saw, I'm pretty confident, was Pleiades. And I said, Matariki, which is our name. Matariki is a name used with its various dialects from Hawaii, Samoa, Tonga, right down to us in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And to hear your story about what we call Patupaerehe and Tūrehu, who also taught us the language of the land, for the poetry of our language is the reflection of the poetry of the land. It was great to hear that story this morning. Tēnā koe. Tēnā hui hui tātou. As I said, my name is Che Wilson. I'm of Ngāti, Rangi and Whanganui descent. I come from a decent-sized family, and that's not all of us. I'm number 9 of 9, and we have 10 whāngai brothers and sisters, so it's common in our culture to also raise other children. And so I've got 10 other brothers and sisters. I'm married to Riria, and that's my princess, Henera Āmoa, and my prince, Te Kanawa. E rere kau mai te awa nui, mai te kā ui maunga ki Tangaroa, ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au. The river flows from the mountains to the sea. I am the river, and the river is me. This proverb defines who we are as a confederation of tribes from Aotearoa, New Zealand, right down to there. which is rather tropical compared to here. We are based at from the central volcanoes of the North Island and following westward to the west coast into the Tasman Sea, the two rivers of Whanganui and Whangaehu that define our tribal area. We are family groups that continue to be organised through a kinship system. This system has worked for generations and each group is named after an ancestor. I am Ngāti Rangi, the descendants of the ancestor Pai Rangi, who was named after the god of the Milky Way. We confederate under the umbrella of the name of our principal river, Whanganui. The Whanganui River, a river that oozes from the depths, from the core of Papatuanuku, Mother Earth, and is sourced from the central volcanoes. Water is female for her life-giving principles, and the original name of our river is male, therefore giving balance. The Whangaehu River, which starts from the crater lake here and flows there and cascades meters, hundreds of meters down the river, down the mountain, is the other catchment of our tribe. This river starts at Te Waiāmoe, the crater lake, on Mount Ruapehu, the largest central volcano of New Zealand, and flows down to meet the ocean some 20 to 30 kilometres south of the mouth of the Whanganui River. In comparison to Alaska, both rivers are small. The Whanganui is only 180 miles long. The Whangaehu is 84 miles long. But what is key is that our grandmothers would say, ko te wai, ko te ora. Water is life. And like it is for many cultures around the world, the word we use as Māori to describe water is wai. This word is also used to ask someone who they are, because we are a reflection of our rivers, our streams, our swamps, our lakes and our coastlines. And so when we ask each other, who are you? We are saying, who are your waters? Who are the waters that flow within you? Because the waters that flow on the land are the same waters that flow in us. Ko wai koe, who are you? And so it is only appropriate that in accordance with my traditions, I will now introduce you to my mountains, to my rivers, and my ancestors, so that we can connect as people, and hopefully we can find a relationship similar to what Liz referred to, that connects us to Te Moana Nui Ākiwa, the Pacific. For I am not Polynesian, a name coined by someone else to describe me. Instead, I am a child of Maui, not Maui, Maui, the great demigod whose playground was and still is the great ocean of Kiwa, the Pacific. Maui, who draws forth the lava from the depths of the Pacific to create volcanic islands throughout the Pacific Ring of Fire. That is who I am. Ko ruapeu te maunga, ko wangai u te awa ki uta, ko wanga nui te awa ki tai. Ko Ngāti Rangi te iwi ki uta, ko te āti aunui te iwi ki tai, ko Wanganui te iwi wānui, tēnā koutou. Ko ngā paupau ware o roto, ko te kingitanga o te maungarongo ko Tirorangi, ko Rānana, ko Pārāweka, tēnei e mii atu nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā uiui tātou katoa. So this is who I am, and it is truly an honour to be here. Yes, it's taken a long time to get here, and yes, it's freezing. And yes, my body is working overtime just to keep warm with my hair nostrils freezing within seconds. This morning I went to Liz, oh my God, my nose, oh, my hair nostrils are frozen. Oh my God. But can I also give the apologies of Mr. Gerard Albert, the chair of the Whanganui River entity. He negotiated the Whanganui, I negotiated the Wangaihu, who is unable to be here to present with me. You'll hear this saying quite a lot during my presentation. E rere kau mai te awa nui, mai te kāui maunga ki Tangaroa, ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au. The great river flows from the mountains to the sea. I am the river, and the river is me. When we break down this proverb, what it means is that the river dictates our weather, the resources we can use, the way we interact with our neighbours, and the way we once migrated with the four seasons. The key distinction being with the four seasons. For I am the river, and the river is me. And I'm sure something you already truly understand. For the river is my world, for the river is my universe, the place where I source food, the place where I source transportation, and the place where I source shelter. For the river is my ancestor, for the river is my God, the place where I perform rituals to commit and invigorate each generation, tomorrow and onwards. Therefore, I am the river, and the river is me. I am the universe, and the universe is me. And I am a reflection of my river and my divinity. So when the river is polluted, we as a tribe, as the river's human voice, we are sick. When the river is diverted for hydropower generation, we as a tribe are distracted and agitated because our rhythm is out of sync, because the river's flow is cut off at the headwaters. So this is a story of one river that paves the way for its neighbouring river, so that as a people, both our rivers are cared for, and all our people that live on both catchments are able to sing our tribal songs that connect us via the places and events that have occurred on the banks of both rivers over centuries of connection and legacy. Some context first. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, there is one legal system which has riddled Māori with problems for a long time. Māori sub-tribes, hapu, signed a treaty with the British Crown in 1840 that has resulted in numerous breaches, and in the last 20 years, iwi, the collective of sub-tribes that signed the treaty, have been entering into compromised arrangements that result in the government of New Zealand giving us 1 to 2% of the value of what we lost through cash and assets as a full and final settlement. The largest settlements have been $170 million and the smallest being just under $1 million. It should also be noted that through a settlement of compromise, we as Māori gift 98% of our goodwill to to our nation. Often question why we do that. It is through this process, as the Whanganui tribes, that we are able to cut the pie differently, that we were able to cut the pie differently and leverage a result that the world is now celebrating. And the purpose of my presentation to you today. So some history first. Our journey started when we arrived in our land. But if we fast forward to 1877, and I'll only cover some of the points and I'll leave the rest for you to read. In 1877, our tribe objected to regulating traditional fishing practices. Moving along to 1886, we then petitioned the stopping of steamboats because with the steamboats, they then would use and change the river, and most of our fishing structures were in the rapids of the river. And because they needed the rapids clear for the steamboats to get up the river, they destroyed the eel weirs, the eel traps. By 1895, the colonial board took over the control of the river. In 1907, the Native Land Court, which was never our friend, rules that we should be compensated for the abstraction of gravel. Then the colonial board, all of these different boards and courts to confuse things, similar system I'm sure, declares that no traditional fishing structures, pātuna, would be allowed to be built ever again. Moving along, we then petitioned the New Zealand Parliament for compensation in 1927. Jumping forward to 1936, the tribe lodges a petition for ownership of the river, and we win. And then they change the rules. But important to that is we still had some land that was ours through the Native Land Court. And so what our people did to raise funds to go to court is all of their checks, all their paychecks that they got as dividends from their land, from the use of their land by the white man, all those paychecks went into a collective fund to fight this case. And so every village, our leaders went to every village and people gave their checks over to help fight this case. And so we won in 36. The government appealed a number of times, and then the government wins 10 years later, or 13 years later. We then try and go through another form, a commission of inquiry, to rule that we do own the riverbed, and we lose that in 1955. In 1960, the headwaters of our river, the 8 catchment, the 7 key tributaries and the main stem are all diverted. And so it's only after some time that nature replenishes herself again. And surprise, surprise, in 1962, the Crown or the government declared that they owned the bed of the river. We then tried to petition Queen Elizabeth, and the government kicks that to touch. And in 1988, we establish a new board to progress the negotiations for this claim. But more importantly, the following year, in 1989, we establish an annual excursion from the top of the river to the ocean that is only for us. And what's important about that is we decide, stuff the law, let's just travel our river and let every user know that this is our river. So any rowing regatta, any fishing competition that's on our river, if it's on during our time of year, we will just go right through it because it is ours and we belong to the river. And so 1989 is key. And I was fortunate to be the youngest on the first ever excursion and was from there thrown into leadership roles after that. A couple of years later, we agree to a framework and we get nowhere with that framework. And then in 1995, we upset everything again by occupying a public park in the principal city at the mouth of the river. A principal city that is an old money city, was an original port for the colonisers, and a beautiful English-looking city. And we occupy, and they often forget that we were dumb enough to gift a lot of the land for the public. And so one of those areas that we gifted, we then occupied. And our people were jailed, a very long occupation. But it made the then government realise, and the then local government realise, that we meant business in this generation like we did in the previous generations. And so in 2003, terms of negotiations between the tribe and the government were signed, and again they failed. And in 2007, I haven't highlighted that, but it's important because I'm sure you'll have an appreciation for this. In 2007, our two tribal leaders, our political leader and our medicine man, they stood up at a tribal gathering and they said, "Let us be the payment." And so our medicine man died the next year. He was my teacher. And I know he's smiling today. And then 3 years later, our political leader, who also didn't get to see the final result, was also the payment. And I know they'll both be having an argument right now. So in August 2014, we signed the deal. There was money given, some of that money for us as a people, as a tribe, some of that money for the cleanup of the river. And that all results in the Whanganui River becoming the first river in the world to have a legal personality. So in March this year, that's us in the gallery in the House of Parliament, where the members of Parliament are below us and they have just moved and passed the third reading of the bill, which then makes the Whanganui River its own legal personality and therefore statute, therefore law. And so, yes, it's a legal milestone internationally. And it also gave way for our other main river to then be recognised in August, just a few months ago. And we signed a deal a few months ago, and it'll take about 12 to 18 months for us to legislate that. But in that case, because with treaty settlement, there is, in the eyes of the government, there is no precedent, so they're not allowed to do anything twice. And they're always full and final until they make another mistake so we can see them again. But there was no money given for the other catchment and a lesser legal standing. However, the River Ganges in India has since followed the Whanganui example. And many of the clauses in the legislation for the River Ganges appear to be similar, or even in places, and this is really cool, often would be, if it was in a university doing an assignment, it would be seen as plagiarism or lazy. But what's really cool is some of the clauses in the Indian legislation are an exact cut and paste. And I say that's cool because that's recognising Indigenous knowledge. It's recognising Indigenous knowledge. And as we all know, a river starts with one drop. So, as Māori, as our people that work the rivers daily, or even for my parents who see the world clearly through its simplicity and without complication, they ask, will this personality help the river get better, help the river to be well, and ensure that we have food to catch to feed our families? Or is it a whole lot of legal and academic guff? I say guff because why would a river need to sue a person or company if the river is our ancestor? If the river is our senior in our genealogy, senior to me in our symbiotic connection with each other, wouldn't we then just care for the river? As has already been said, we fail really well in that part. And sadly, we live in a reality of loss and the hard impacts of colonisation that have oppressed so much that we continue to subtly oppress ourselves, and sometimes even better than the coloniser. But there's always hope, eh? There's always hope. The first principles for the Whanganui River and the Wangaihu River give us hope and will force change. They have been developed to reteach us as Māori and as Pākehā, the white man, as New Zealanders, how to talk to the river rather than talk about the river. Rather than talk about the river as a thing. These first principles promote kawa, the universal order passed down from our ancestors over centuries, where the river and our natural order is first and sustainable use is second. Yes, in this day and age, this is going to be a challenge for us when the river has been diverted at its headwaters for almost 50 years. Agriculture has been in existence for over a century, and the soil structure in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is young. Therefore, as a result of deforestation for the farming, the river valley is prone to erosion. Added to that, both river systems, the Whanganui and the Wangaihu, are diverted. And so normally the Whanganui would flow that way, and the Wangaihu would flow that way to the west. Instead, they're diverted through these structures. So 8 rivers there, 26 waterways there, all diverted into this big holding tank, which happens to be our largest lake in New Zealand anyway, and then through to the Waikato River. And the challenge with the Waikato River system is it's now the richest producer of dairy products for our country. It also provides the water for municipal supply for our largest city, Auckland. And 20 to 30%, depending on the time of year, of that river's flow is diverted from us. All the benefit stays in the other catchment. We get nothing from it, and actually, for most New Zealanders, they are blind to it because it's hidden in state forests where you're not allowed to go. So, this is why the first principles are so important, because those first principles are going to force us to behave differently as we go forward. And it's going to be a challenge for the local government and the central government, or federal, because when you're used to doing what you're used to doing, we struggle to take our hats off. And in struggling to take our hats off, there is therefore only one way. But it's exciting times. It's exciting times because what has happened is the Whanganui principles have been developed under the concept of Te Awa Tupua. And Te Awa Tupua, that meaning is a river that gains momentum, status, and divine force is what guides us going forward. And important for us not to forget the momentum, the status, and the divine force. So principle number 1, and I'm happy to share these slides with anybody that wants them. Ko te awa te mātāpuna o te ora, translated as, the river is the source of spiritual and physical sustenance. Te awa tupua is our Ganges, is our Nile, is our Mississippi, is our Yukon. And it must sustain itself first, as well as our spiritual and physical needs as humanity. Principle number 2, e rere kau mai te awa nui, mai te kāui maunga ki Tangaroa, translated as, the great river flows from the mountains to the sea. Te awa tupua is an indivisible and living whole, and includes its physical and metaphysical components from the source in the mountains to the ocean. Principle number 3, ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au, translated as, I am the river and the river is me. The tribes and sub-tribes of the river interconnected with and to the river, and this responsibility means we have to work the river for it to be real in our minds, hearts and bodies. And so it can't be just something that I talk about from the city that I live in, some 300 kilometres away from the catchment. I have to go home and connect and be one with the river to work it. Principle number 4, ngā manga iti ngā manga nui e ono kauana, ka tupu, e awa tupua. Translated as, the small and large streams that flow into one another and form one great river. The awa tupua is one entity comprised of many parts and communities, working together for the common cause of the health and well-being of the river. Moving on to the next river, the principles of the Whangaihu are similar and have only been articulated differently for 2 reasons. The main stem of the river is naturally sulphuric, and for the purposes of negotiating with the New Zealand government, we had to outline to them why we are different. Why we are different, and whether we were a different tribe or not. And so we didn't lie, we just stretched the possibilities so that both rivers within our tribal area would be given similar recognition. And so the Wangaihu principles, I've made these short, are very similar. The first one is almost the same. Ko te kāhui maunga te mātāpuna o te ora. Translated as the sacred mountain clan, the source of te waiu o te ika, is the source of life. And we've done this one specifically because we have another negotiation about to happen for the oldest national park in New Zealand, and I think it's the fourth oldest in the world, the Tongariro National Park, which is the source of both rivers. And so we've included the reference to the mountain clan now so that we can use that as leverage when we enter into the next negotiation. And we've got other negotiations happening right now as well for our land. So we were able to separate land and rivers, and in this case, parks. And moving down, I'll just go through this bit quickly. E waiariki rangi, e waiariki nuku, tuku iho, tuku iho. And so, translated as the interconnected whole, and the fact that we must revere the river as an interconnected whole and value the river from generation to generation to generation. It's our responsibility to pass on. The last two principles, ko ngā wai tie u ki ngā wai riki, tukui o ki tai ei waiu, breast milk, ei wai tō tae. And translated that the living, nurturing waters providing potency to the land and its people from source to tributary to the ocean. And that we have to use the river, but we have to remember our place in using the river. That's the key thing here. We're not saying let's stop all of the economic and commercial activity, because in the case of this river, we are the largest farmer. We own the largest farm. It's been in our hands for centuries, and the last 100 and something years we've been farming that land. But also, just because it's a native farm doesn't mean that we can get away with bad practices. And the last principle, kia hua mai ngā kōrero o ngā wai, kia hua mai te wai ora e. Translated as the potential of the river and the potential of its people and its stories will live on. Because without stories, irrespective of culture, there's no connection to a place. And so it's important that we continue to acknowledge the place and the rivers as we grow in our prosperity. So, these first principles are for us as communities to work through together with our co-governance boards and with the pautupua, the respective voice and conscience of the river. The position of pautupua has been created so that when the co-governance boards that will manage the two river systems can't find a way forward, the human voice and conscience of the river will then make the decision. And so just 2.5, almost 3 weeks ago, we consecrated the two people that will represent the voice and conscience of the Whanganui River. We consecrated them at 3 a.m. in the morning, and we do it at that time because before the break of dawn, we tell our senior cousins, the birds and the insects, on this day, may we have the first drink of the day. And so we consecrated them in the dark. The more able-bodied ones of us had to then strip off and go into the river and fully immerse ourselves. And you know, it's spring's just finishing, but there's still a lot of snow melt. So, it was rather revitalising. But I spoke when we returned back to our marae, to our big house, and I said to everybody, it's moments like this that it's important to remind ourselves of the world of comfort and convenience we live in. For the world of comfort and convenience isn't the world of our river. And on this morning, what I said then, on this morning, it is only appropriate that we sacrifice, that we fasted the night before, and we sacrifice to commit to our river, our universe, our God, our Creator. Yes, you are special. And so we did this. And the two people that have been chosen are Dame Tariana Turia, who is a knight of the realm, of the British realm, of the realm of the Commonwealth, and Tūra Mahawira. Auntie Tari was raised at the mouth of the river. Cousin Tūrama was raised in the headwaters of the river. Auntie Tari was appointed by the New Zealand government. Cousin Tūrama was appointed by all of the tribes. Neither of them to represent either group, but to be the voice of the river. And in the negotiations, when the Crown asked, but where's the balance? Where's the balance for a Crown voice, a government voice, and a tribal voice? And our response was, the balance is female and male. That is the balance. Because it's going to take a number of generations before New Zealand is able to truly represent the voice of the river. Therefore, it can only be us that can represent this voice for some generations. Until we learn as a country how to talk to the river rather than about the river. So as I started off, this is a story of our two rivers. A story led by the Whanganui River to then help the Wangaihu River. A story and journey that will bubble up passion and be thought-provoking. A story and journey that will have rapids and calm spots. A story and journey that will have whirlpools and slow-flowing water. That will eventually meet and mix with the ocean to be shared with the rest of the world. For the river, my river, your river, our river, flows from the mountains to the sea. We are the river, and the river is us. It is custom for us to sing at the end of our speeches, no reira tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. E re re, te awa, tupua, mai te kahui maunga, ki tangaroa, ka whakapiri a mai, ko ngā piringa, hine ngā kau, a maupoko, tūpoho pōtiki e, ko au te awa ko au te awa ko au. E re re, te awa, tupua. Tēnā hui hui tātou katoa. Thank you, everybody.